Evelyn Reed, 32 years old, was a creature of habit, much like the rhythmic pulse of the financial markets she meticulously navigated. Her alarm, a harsh digital squawk, tore through the pre-dawn quiet of her Lincoln Park apartment at 5:30 a.m. every weekday. Before the first blush of Chicago's infamous sun could tint the eastern sky over Lake Michigan, she was already up, brewing a strong pot of French roast, its aroma a comforting anchor. Her small, well-ordered kitchen with its worn butcher block counter was her sanctuary before the storm. By 6:15 a.m., dressed in a sharp, understated business suit, always charcoal, navy, or a muted plaid, and sensible, low-heeled pumps, she'd be out the door, the chill bite of Chicago air a familiar companion. She wasn't one for the frantic scramble of the Red Line. Her preferred mode was the Lake Shore Drive Express bus, offering panoramic views of the city waking up. The ride was her ritualistic buffer, a chance to review the day's agenda on her Palm Pilot, its monochrome screen a stark contrast to the burgeoning digital world, or simply to gaze out, watching the loop skyscrapers materialize against the improving light, a testament to ambition. Her office at Ethel Solutions, a sprawling technology and consulting firm headquartered in a gleaming tower on Wacker Drive, was her second home. Evelyn was a senior financial analyst, specializing in forensic accounting and internal audits. Her desk, unlike the chaos of some colleagues, was a testament to organized efficiency. Dual monitors displaying complex spreadsheets, meticulously labeled binders, and a single-framed photo of her late grandmother. Evelyn loved the precision of numbers, the irrefutable truth they held, a stark contrast to the often murky world of corporate politics. She believed in data, in integrity, that every dollar had a story, and it was her job to ensure that story was honest. Her mornings were a blur of reports, reconciliations, and conference calls. She navigated Ethel's complex global operations with an almost intuitive understanding, her fingers flying across the keyboard, extracting data, cross-referencing figures, identifying discrepancies others would miss. She thrived on the intellectual challenge, the detective work inherent in her role. Lunch was usually a quick sandwich from the building's deli, eaten at her desk, or a brisk walk around the block for fresh air. Evelyn was respected for her sharp mind and unwavering commitment to accuracy. She didn't engage in office gossip or intricate social dances. Her focus was on her work, on doing things right. Her ambition wasn't driven by power or personal accolades, but by a deep-seated desire for truth and a belief in ethical business. She dreamt of leading her own audit team, of implementing systems for absolute transparency. It was a simple, honorable ambition, pursued with every fiber of her being. The first tremor registered in late September 2002. Evelyn had been assigned a deep-dive audit of Ethel's new European expansion project, spearheaded by Arthur Sterling, the senior vice president of global strategy. Art, as he insisted everyone call him, was a corporate titan, a man whose presence filled a room, whose booming laugh and charismatic storytelling were legendary. He was also, in Evelyn's private estimation, a master of smoke and mirrors. As Evelyn delved deeper into the project's financials, the numbers began to tell a disturbing story. Revenue projections were wildly inflated, expenses understated, and several large contracts with shell companies in offshore havens seemed entirely fabricated. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became. Art Sterling wasn't just overly optimistic. He was systematically siphoning funds, creating ghost projects, and cooking the books on a scale that would make federal regulators gasp. It was a meticulous, brazen fraud, hidden behind layers of corporate jargon and Art's undeniable charm. She compiled a dossier of evidence. Every email, every ledger entry, every suspicious wire transfer was documented with meticulous precision. She presented her findings to her superior, Robert Thorne, the head of internal audit, a man known more for timidity than backbone. Thorne, faced with the enormity of Sterling's deception, blanched. He told Evelyn to handle it delicately, to find a way to make it disappear. Evelyn refused, Her integrity wouldn't allow it. The confrontation with Art Sterling took place a week later in a sterile, glass-walled conference room. Evelyn, Thorne, Art, and General Counsel Martha Jenkins were present. Evelyn laid out her findings with calm, irrefutable logic, her voice steady despite an internal tremor. She presented the evidence: bank statements, signed invoices from non-existent vendors, a paper trail leading directly to Sterling's personal accounts. Art Sterling listened, his face initially a mask of benign amusement, then shifting to injured bewilderment. When Evelyn finished, the room was silent. Then Art did something Evelyn hadn't anticipated. He didn't deny it. Instead, his eyes welled up. A single tear tracked a path down his weathered cheek. "Evelyn," he began, his voice hoarse with manufactured emotion, I understand why you'd think this. These numbers look bad, I know. But what you don't know, what I haven't told anyone, I've been battling stage 3 pancreatic cancer for the past 6 months. It's been a nightmare. The treatments, the stress, I haven't been myself. I've made some terrible decisions, yes, I admit it. Desperate decisions, trying to secure my family's future, knowing my time is limited. I've been under immense pressure, trying to keep it together for Ethel, trying to keep my health a secret to avoid causing alarm. He turned to Martha Jenkins, his voice cracking. I lost my way, I was scared. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt the company. I don't know what I was thinking. My mind isn't what it used to be. Martha, a shrewd corporate lawyer, exchanged a quick, unreadable glance with Thorne. Evelyn, however, felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This was a classic deflection, a master manipulator at work. But to use such a devastating illness, whether real or fabricated, was beyond contempt. "Mr. Sterling," Evelyn began, her voice firm, "with all due respect, while I sympathize with any personal health struggles, the financial discrepancies here amount to over $12 million. This isn't a simple oversight due to stress. It's a systematic pattern of fraud spanning over a year." Art recoiled, as if struck. "Are you calling me a liar, Evelyn? Are you suggesting I would fabricate a life-threatening illness to avoid what? A reprimand? You, a young woman, casting judgment on a man fighting for his life?" He dabbed his eyes with a silk handkerchief. "I made mistakes. My judgment was clouded, but I would never betray the trust placed in me, not intentionally. This is a cry for help, not an act of malice." Thorne, ever the weak link, cleared his throat. "Evelyn, perhaps we can look at this through a different lens. Arthur is clearly under immense duress. Maybe we can find a way to mitigate the damage internally." Martha Jenkins, ever pragmatic, spoke next. "Arthur, we will need to verify your medical claims, of course. But assuming they are true, this presents a delicate situation for the company." She paused, then turned to Evelyn. "Evelyn, while your work is commendable in its thoroughness, the optics of accusing a man battling a serious illness of malicious fraud are problematic, especially without absolute proof of his intent beyond reasonable doubt, which, given his circumstances, becomes harder to establish." Evelyn felt a surge of incandescent rage. "The proof is in the ledgers, Miss Jenkins. The intent is in the repeated, deliberate actions. This isn't about optics, it's about criminal fraud." Art, seeing his opening, shook his head sadly. "It seems Evelyn has no empathy, no understanding of human frailty. Just cold, hard numbers. I wish I could say I was surprised, but her reputation for being dispassionate precedes her." He sighed dramatically. "I suppose this is what happens when you let machines make decisions. No heart, no soul, and that was it." The conversation ended. Thorne later pulled Evelyn aside. "Evelyn, corporate has decided to reevaluate the audit. They're going to bring in an external firm. Your services on this particular project are no longer required." It was a soft dismissal, but Evelyn knew what it meant. She was being sidelined. Her career, her integrity, all sacrificed on the altar of corporate image and Art Sterling's crocodile tears. Cancer boss used tears to avoid accountability. Finance didn't cry with him. The headline, though unwritten, echoed in her mind. Her meticulous, irrefutable evidence was being dismissed, her own credibility undermined. Thorne couldn't meet her eyes. She was a liability, a threat to the carefully constructed narrative of a benevolent, albeit flawed, executive. The world Evelyn had so carefully built around herself, a world of logic and order, crumbled. The familiar Chicago streets, usually a source of comfort, now felt like a suffocating labyrinth. She walked out of Ethel Solutions that afternoon in a daze, the autumn wind whipping through her hair. The towering buildings seemed to mock her, their glass facades reflecting a distorted, insignificant image of her defeat. She didn't go home. Instead, she found herself walking aimlessly, past the bustling shops on Michigan Avenue, past Millennium Park, the bean reflecting the chaos of her internal world. The humiliation burned within her, a raw, festering wound. How could they dismiss her findings so easily? How could a clear case of fraud be swept under the rug by a performance worthy of an Oscar? Art Sterling's feigned tears, his whispered confession of illness, had poisoned the room, turning everyone against her. She was painted as the heartless, unfeeling numbers person, devoid of empathy, a cold calculation machine. Finance didn't cry with him. No, she hadn't. She had seen through the act, seen the manipulation, and for that, she was being punished. Hours later, as dusk settled, she found herself perched on a bench by the lakefront, the chill biting through her suit jacket. The vast, indifferent expanse of Lake Michigan mirrored her emptiness. Anger simmered beneath her despair. Anger at Art Sterling for his audacious deceit. Anger at Thorne for his spineless capitulation. Anger at Martha Jenkins for her cynical pragmatism, and a crushing disappointment in herself for believing that truth and justice held sway in the corporate world. She pulled out her Nokia 3310, no one to call. Her few close friends were mostly colleagues, now probably hearing a distorted version of events. Her grandmother, her rock, was gone. She felt utterly alone. The next morning, the official notice arrived. Evelyn was placed on administrative leave, pending further review of her conduct and the sensitivity of her recent audit report. It was a thinly veiled threat, a warning to keep silent. Her key card was deactivated. Her access to Ethel's servers revoked. She was locked out. For days, she barely left her apartment. The routine that had defined her life vanished, replaced by suffocating inertia. She reread her audit report. It was flawless. The evidence was overwhelming, yet it was ignored. She felt a profound sense of injustice, a burning desire to rectify the wrong. She replayed the meeting, Art Sterling's performance, the way he subtly shifted the narrative, a man fighting for his life. It was brilliant, evil brilliance, but there was something nagging at her, the way his eyes had hardened for a split second when she mentioned the 12 million. The almost imperceptible smirk when he'd accused her of being dispassionate. He hadn't expected her to be so relentless. And his story about the cancer, he hadn't offered any proof. Martha Jenkins had mentioned verification, but Evelyn suspected it would be buried. A flicker of a new emotion ignited within her, not just anger, but a cold, calculated resolve. This wasn't just about her job anymore. This was about principle. This was about proving that numbers, the unvarnished truth, could not be silenced by tears or corporate machinations. Art Sterling had underestimated her. He had seen a quiet analyst, easily dismissed. He hadn't seen the steel beneath the composed exterior. The initial shock gave way to a chilling clarity. Evelyn knew she couldn't fight Ethel Solutions directly, not without resources, not from the outside. But Art Sterling had made a critical error. He had assumed her dismissal meant her silence. He had underestimated the tenacity of a woman whose entire professional life was built on uncovering hidden truths. Her advantage wasn't a magic key or a secret benefactor. It was her brain, her meticulous habits, and a single, critical decision she'd made weeks before the confrontation. Robert Thorne, in his weak-kneed attempt to protect Art, had ordered her to clean up the initial draft of her audit report, which contained raw, unfiltered data and her most aggressive conclusions. He wanted a sanitized version for official channels. Evelyn, instinctively distrusting the request, had followed orders, but not without making a complete, encrypted digital backup of her original, unredacted findings. She had saved it to a secure, password-protected server she maintained at home, a habit she'd cultivated years ago for personal financial records and independent research. This wasn't just a copy. It was the entire forensic pathway, cross-referenced with internal codes and external public records she had meticulously gathered. Furthermore, Evelyn had, during her initial deep dive, developed an almost photographic memory for Art Sterling's financial patterns. She knew the names of the shell companies, the specific offshore banks, the exact dates of the suspicious transfers. She had the skeletal structure of his fraud imprinted on her mind, even without the physical files. Her plan began to coalesce, cold and precise. She couldn't expose him through Ethel's internal channels, they were compromised. She needed an external, incorruptible force, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Whistleblower protections were still evolving in 2002, but the principle was clear. To get their attention, she needed more than just her word. She needed to deliver a case so airtight, so undeniable, that it would force their hand. The challenge was to confirm Art Sterling's cancer claims without direct access to Ethel's HR or his personal medical records. If he was faking, that would be a crucial piece, cementing his manipulative intent. If real, it still didn't excuse the fraud. This required a different investigation, outside corporate walls. Evelyn started with public records. She cross-referenced Art Sterling's known residential addresses, a high-end condo in Lincoln Park, a summer home in Nantucket with local hospital affiliations. It was a long shot, a needle in a haystack. But Art Sterling was a man of routine and status. He wouldn't go to just any clinic. Through online searches, using early search engines like Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves, she researched prominent oncologists and cancer treatment centers in Chicago and Massachusetts. This was slow, painstaking work, often leading to dead ends. She used her old network, not directly asking about Art, but subtly probing for information about high-profile health issues in the corporate world. One casual conversation with a former colleague dropped a crucial hint. You know, Art Sterling always talked about his regular checkups at Northwestern Memorial, said they were the best for executive physicals. A breakthrough. Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Evelyn knew the strict privacy laws. She couldn't just call, but she could be ingenious. She crafted a fake email, carefully designed to look like an internal hospital communication from the billing department, requesting confirmation of recent payment for Executive Wellness Program for Arthur Sterling. The email contained a subtle typo in an internal code designed to trigger a human review. She sent it to a generic billing address listed on Northwestern's website. A few days later, a curt, automated reply bounced back. Payment confirmed. No outstanding balance for services rendered between March and September 2002. Services rendered. Not treatments, not chemotherapy. Executive Wellness Program. This wasn't proof he didn't have cancer, but it strongly suggested he hadn't undergone extensive, life-saving treatment during the period he claimed. It was circumstantial, but powerful. The dates perfectly aligned with his alleged struggle. Her next move was even more audacious. She learned from an old Ethel directory that Art Sterling's personal assistant, Brenda, attended the same church in Oak Park every Sunday. Evelyn, a lapsed Catholic, found herself attending Mass in Oak Park, sitting unobtrusively a few pews behind Brenda, week after week. One Sunday, after the service, she accidentally bumped into Brenda, feigning surprise and delight. Evelyn quickly spun a tale of having moved to Oak Park recently and wanting to find a new spiritual home. She struck up a casual conversation, carefully steering it towards Brenda's work, subtly probing. "Oh, Mr. Sterling is just such a force," Evelyn enthused. "I always admired his energy, especially with everything he's going through." Brenda, a kind-faced woman in her late 50s, paused, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "He is, isn't he, always busy, never a moment's rest." It must be hard with his health, Evelyn ventured, her heart pounding. Brenda gave a small, almost imperceptible shrug. Well, he certainly keeps us on our toes. Always working, always traveling. He's a busy man. She changed the subject too quickly to the church bake sale, but Evelyn noticed something crucial. Brenda hadn't corrected her. She hadn't expressed sympathy for a sick boss. Her reaction was guarded, almost dismissive of the health aspect. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was another brick in Evelyn's wall of suspicion. Art Sterling's closest assistant seemed to know nothing of a life-threatening illness. Evelyn then shifted her focus back to the financial data. She refined her encrypted file, adding footnotes, cross-references to public SEC filings, and hypothetical scenarios of Ethel's stock price if the fraud were to go unaddressed. She built a narrative, not just a spreadsheet, a story of corporate malfeasance, carefully constructed, piece by damning piece. She linked Art Sterling's personal accounts to specific shell companies, then those shell companies to the fabricated European project expenses. The sheer scale and audacity of it were breathtaking. She had everything: the motive, the means, and the undeniable paper and digital trail. She was ready. On a Tuesday morning in late November, Evelyn walked into the federal building on South Dearborn Street, a briefcase clutched tightly in her hand. The air was crisp, winter-threatening, but Evelyn felt a strange warmth radiating from within. This wasn't about anger anymore, it was about surgical precision. She had an appointment with a senior investigator in the SECS Enforcement Division. Her meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. She spoke with calm authority, presenting her evidence with the same meticulous detail she had applied to her audit report. She laid out the fraudulent scheme, the inflated revenues, the phantom projects, the siphoning of funds through shell corporations. She then presented her secondary investigation into Art Sterling's alleged illness, highlighting the lack of medical records at Northwestern Memorial for treatment during the specified period, the vague responses from his personal assistant, and the sudden, convenient timing of his diagnosis, precisely when her audit began to reveal the truth. She even provided printouts of her email to Northwestern's billing department and the automated response. The investigators, initially skeptical, grew increasingly attentive. They recognized the hallmarks of a well-orchestrated financial crime. Her original, unredacted audit report, meticulously cross-referenced and backed by verifiable public records, was the smoking gun. It detailed every illicit transaction, every false claim, every dollar stolen. Miss Reed, the lead investigator, Agent Ramirez, finally said, "This is an incredibly comprehensive and damning report. The scope of this fraud, it's substantial, and the alleged use of a serious illness to deflect accountability, that adds another layer of depravity." Evelyn simply nodded. Finance didn't cry with him, she thought, a quiet satisfaction settling over her. The SEC moved swiftly and discreetly. Within weeks, Ethel Solutions received an official inquiry. Simultaneously, forensic accountants, not unlike Evelyn, but with federal backing, descended upon Ethel's offices. They didn't need Evelyn's keycard, they had subpoenas. The corporate landscape at Ethel Solutions, once so stable, began to buckle. Thorne, her former boss, was questioned extensively. Martha Jenkins, the general counsel, found herself in a precarious position, her earlier dismissal of Evelyn's findings now looking like complicity. Whispers turned into murmurs, then into full-blown panic. Art Sterling, still operating under the illusion of his untouchability, initially scoffed at the minor inquiry. But as the SEC's investigation intensified, as they began to interview more employees, as the paper trail Evelyn had so diligently laid out began to resurface through federal channels, his bravado withered. The narrative of the sick, misunderstood executive crumbled under the weight of irrefutable, externally verified facts. The real blow came in early January 2003. Federal marshals arrived at Ethel Solutions, not in the quiet, discreet manner of an inquiry, but with the stark, unmistakable authority of an arrest warrant. Art Sterling, mid-conference call, was taken into custody on multiple charges of wire fraud, mail fraud, and embezzlement. The news sent shockwaves through the financial world, making headlines in the Wall Street Journal and the Chicago Tribune. The story wasn't just about corporate fraud. It was about the alleged manipulation of public sympathy through a fabricated illness. Cancer boss used tears to avoid accountability. Finance didn't cry with him. The headline, once a silent thought in Evelyn's mind, now screamed from every news outlet. Ethel Solutions was plunged into crisis. Its stock plummeted. Shareholder lawsuits piled up. The board of directors, desperate to restore confidence, initiated an aggressive restructuring. Robert Thorne was fired, along with several other executives implicated in the cover-up. Martha Jenkins, though not charged, resigned, her reputation irreparably damaged. Evelyn, once an outcast, found herself quietly vindicated. The SEC acknowledged her crucial role as a whistleblower, protecting her identity initially, but her former colleagues quickly put two and two together. She received offers from several top forensic accounting firms, eager to leverage her exceptional skills and her reputation for unyielding integrity. Art Sterling's trial was swift and brutal. The prosecution presented Evelyn's meticulously compiled evidence, buttressed by the SEC's own findings. The cancer defense was dismantled by expert medical testimony, revealing no record of treatment and, in fact, recent routine checkups that showed him in robust health. His performance had been an elaborate, cruel lie. Facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of decades in prison, he eventually pleaded guilty, trading a reduced sentence for cooperation. He received a 15-year sentence in federal prison, a spectacular fall from grace. Evelyn didn't revel in his downfall. The satisfaction was not in his suffering, but in the restoration of truth. She watched the news reports from her apartment, a quiet sense of closure washing over her. The financial markets, ruthless in their judgment, had indeed not cried with Art Sterling, and neither had she. She accepted a position as a lead forensic auditor at a smaller, highly ethical firm in San Francisco, drawn by the promise of a fresh start and a company culture that valued transparency above all else. She sold her Lincoln Park apartment, packed her meticulously organized belongings, and booked a one-way flight. As the plane ascended over Lake Michigan, the sprawling urban tapestry of Chicago shrinking beneath her, Evelyn felt a profound sense of liberation. Her compass was reset. The numbers had spoken, the truth had prevailed, and she had played her part. Her silent, meticulous revenge was complete, not with a bang, but with the undeniable, irrefutable clarity of an Excel spreadsheet finally balancing out. She had paid the cost, but she had kept her soul. And that, she knew, was a victory far more valuable than any corporate promotion.